The theme song of WrestleMania 21 said it all. Welcome to the future. WrestleMania 21 is one of the most important WrestleManias of all time. And yo, for us ruthless aggression era kids, this was our show. This was the show where our favorites went from being all-stars to MVPs. This was a show where the future became the present, WrestleMania went Hollywood, and let's just say stars were born. WrestleMania 21 just had that big time feel. Leading up to the show, there was just so much hype, so much anticipation, and as kids we were counting down the days until we finally got to see WrestleMania. You had those legendary movie parodies that to this day get brought up. Booker and Eddie in Pulp Fiction, Triple H in Braveheart, when Kurt met Christy. The marketing was genius, so people were just interested. The show sold out in under a minute, and it would go on to do over 1 million buys on pay-per-view. To this day, it's the third highest bought WWE pay-per-view of all time. The world was watching, and it was time for the company to showcase the future. So live from the Staples Center in Los Angeles, wish it was a stadium, but it's still LA, still Hollywood. Let's take a look at what made WrestleMania 21 so important. The show started off with Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio. Do I even need to say anything else? This ended up being Eddie Guerrero's last WrestleMania match, and he went out against one of his greatest rivals and one of his closest friends, Rey Mysterio. At this point, they were tag team champions, and this was just a friendly match, but of course, this ended up becoming an amazing rivalry that had Rey's son's custody on the line. Oh, 2005, good times, good times. It was an amazing way to start the show. The reversals and the wrestling were, of course, as expected, beautiful. The crowd absolutely loved Eddie here. They only got 13 minutes and I wish they got more, but they took advantage of those 13 minutes and they made them count. Rey won at the end and they shook hands. Rest in peace, Eddie Guerrero. 15 years after WrestleMania 21, the Money in the Bank match is arguably the best gimmick match the WWE offers, because let's be real, the Hell in a Cell and Elimination Chamber, they just don't hit the same. The match where men and now women put their bodies and careers on the line in a match that can make your career. You win the Money in the Bank and it's basically the company showing that they trust you and believe in you and that you have what it takes to be a world champion. Well, sometimes. Yeah, press F to pay respect to all of those who have lost their championship match after being a Money in the Bank winner. And this was the first one, the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match. 6 of Raw's best were going to go out there and destroy their bodies and each other for a Money in the Bank briefcase. In that briefcase was a contract for a match against a champion of their choosing, whenever and wherever. And yo, once Kane came out and had the ladders on fire, I just knew this match was going to be unbelievable. You had Shelton flying, Kane flying, and this match just became a demolition derby. The moment when Edge and Christian worked together with the ladders, just a straight flashback to WrestleMania 17 and 2000 was great. But without a doubt, Shelton Benjamin was the MVP. The insane stuff that he did in this match was seen in promos and in the Raw intro for years to come. He put on the performance of his career, the dives, the T-bone suplex off the top of the ladder, but him running on a leaning ladder to clothesline Jericho is one of the coolest, most awesome spots in ladder match history. The camera work was perfect, it was just surreal. Every single fan was standing and clapping. Like I said, Shelton was the MVP. You had poor Christian get thrown off the top of the ladder onto his problem solver. It was legit like some kid was playing a 6-man ladder match on SmackDown vs Raw and it just happened to being aired on pay-per-view. After 15 minutes of destruction, Benoit was about to get the win. He was all alone and everybody was down because everybody just got destroyed. He's climbing, then all you see is Edge run inside after not being seen for like 10 minutes. You hadn't seen him in so long that you forgot he was even in the match. He bashes Chris with the chair. Chris goes flying off. Edge climbs up, and Edge, out of nowhere, the ultimate opportunist, becomes the first ever Money in the Bank winner. It was the perfect way for Edge to win. Just when you least expected it, he came like a thief in the night and took advantage, setting the tone perfectly for how he would move for the rest of his career as the ultimate opportunist. This was Edge's moment. He was an all-time great tag team champion and he put in work in the mid-card, but now he had arrived. Now it was time for his career to really take off, and it took off like Jordan at the free throw line. Edge won the Money in the Bank and the rest was history. He went on to become the most hated wrestler of a generation, the perfect rival of all of our favorites, and it all began here at WrestleMania 21. Speaking of someone we love to hate, Randy Orton, the legend killer. Randy Orton was always seen as the future of the business, someone who was going to be a major player in the WWE for years to come. In August of 2004, he won the World Heavyweight Championship and turned face in what was supposed to be this epic moment and this great run setting up the next big face of the company. And it kind of flopped. Randy was a good face, the fans loved him, just watch Survivor Series 04, but there was just one thing, and that's as good of a face as Randy was. When Randy was a heel, he was just on another level. When he was spitting in the face of Foley, when he was RKOing legends, that was when Randy was at his best. So they wanted to bring heel Randy back, and Randy likes to kill legends, right? And Randy wanted to get his mojo back. He wanted to do something that had never been done before, so he found himself trying to kill the biggest legend of them all, The Undertaker. The build up to this match was great. After months of trying to be a face, Randy just gave up and went back to his ways and went back to being the asshole you just love to hate. This was special because this was the first Undertaker streak match that was about the streak. This wasn't about Taker versus his brother or him versus Flair because Taker hated Flair. No. This was just Orton wanting to end the streak, to be the first man to beat Taker at WrestleMania. This was the year that the streak was brought into the limelight, that the streak really kicked in and the allure began. Orton was out here arguing his girlfriend to show that he didn't want any distractions for Mania. Randy Orton was wilding out by playing mind games with the dead man. He wanted all the action, and obviously the dead man was going to bring it. Streak on the line, and this feud and match really helped get Randy back to being Randy. Randy really cemented himself as a top heel going forward, and he was always going to be a main eventer, obviously, but this proved that he was just a natural born heel. Him and Taker killed it. What I loved about this match was Randy showed no fear. He just kept going. He was never scared. He legit believed he was going to be the one to end the streak, and Taker survived it all, just adding to his legend, just adding to the allure of the streak. This was the first actual streak storyline match, so this needed to be special, and it was. We got one of the coldest reversals ever, the chokeslam into the RKO, but Taker survived it. Taker survived everything. He survived an outside interference from Randy Orton's dad. Taker's streak wasn't going to die that easily, but when the lights were on bright, Randy Orton really stepped it up and put on a great match. But Orton was just so cocky that he had to go for the tombstone against The Undertaker. So he's going for the tombstone, and of course The Undertaker reverses it into his own tombstone. Bang. Legend killer couldn't kill this legend yet. It was a fantastic match that elevated Orton, elevated the streak, and legitimized it, and it was Undertaker's best match in a long time. Everybody won at the end of the day. The show wasn't all about the future though, it was also about the present, and it was also about a dream match. A match that 5 years prior to the show, you would have never thought it was possible. Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels, two of the greatest wrestlers ever on the biggest stage. Everyone knew it was going to be a classic. It all started when HBK eliminated Angle at the Rumble, so Angle came back in the same Rumble and just destroyed Shawn, leaving him a bloody mess. And it was on. When you have two GOATs like this, you don't need some super crazy build, but even their build was 5 stars. Kurt was obsessed with destroying Shawn. He mentioned how he won a gold medal with a broken neck, and all he heard was Shawn Michaels this and Shawn Michaels that. So he went to the WWE, won everything there is to win, and became better than Shawn ever was. And he wanted to beat Shawn on the biggest stage to prove it. And Shawn, well, Shawn was Shawn. Shawn was down. He was Mr. WrestleMania. He said he was a doormat for no one, and he wanted to prove that no, he was the best. And for 2 months they went back and forth attacking each other on their own shows. Kurt left Shawn a bloody mess on Raw. Shawn dressed up as a security guard and sneaked up on Kurt on SmackDown. And how could you forget the iconic sexy Kurt promo? Honestly, one of my favorite promos of all time. It was Shawn versus Kurt. First time ever, legend versus legend, Jim Ross and King on commentary. What more could you ask for? This is a 5-star match if I've ever seen one. This is without a doubt one of the greatest wrestling matches ever. I cannot stress this enough. This was all about who was the better wrestler, and these men, yo, they put on a performance of a lifetime. Mr. WrestleMania versus the Olympic gold medalist, they had it all. First it was the chain wrestling, but then it just became a match filled with drama and passion. Two men pushing themselves to the limit, trying to prove who was the better man. They had counters for everything. Counters that to this day you can't even do in wrestling games. You had Angle trying to suplex Michaels from the apron through an announce table, which just ended up with HBK doing a moonsault, flying through the air onto Angle and onto the table. It was just a war. Both men bleeding from the mouth. You had Sweet Chin Music's being grabbed into ankle locks. For 27 minutes, it was never dull. It was never like, wow, they're really dragging this one along, aren't they? Nah, the The crowd was into it the whole time, and the crazy part was you never knew when it was going to end, how it was going to end, and who was going to win. Like I said, some of the reversals we saw here had my jaw on the floor. So an angle slam gets countered into a roll-up, then the roll-up gets countered into an ankle lock, then back to a roll-up, and then the super kick ends up into an angle slam. It was just so smooth, so beautiful, so perfect, and of course we got Kurt Angle missing a moonsault. It's not a Kurt Angle classic without that. Then we got a moment in which I think every single person watching thought it was over. When Angle ran across the ring, jumped to the top rope, and banged HBK in with an angle slam from the top rope, everybody thought it was over. It had to be, but no. The visual of Angle grabbing Shawn by the hair, screaming in his face, just showed how classic this truly was and how special it was. So Angle is screaming into his face, grabbing his hair. Shawn just gets some separation and bang, sweet chin music, and I swear to God, one of the closest 3 counts I had ever seen in my life. The match finally ended when Angle played possum, pretended to be dead, and out of nowhere, ankle lock. Michaels survived the ankle lock for 2 minutes. As each second passed, the crowd got louder and louder, the more drama we got and more intense it got, and finally Shawn Michaels tapped to the ankle lock. Yes, Shawn Michaels tapped out. What the hell do I even say? This was as perfect of a wrestling match you can get. I will never forget being a kid and watching this and just being shook at what I was witnessing. See, back in the day in 03, 04, and 05, it was rare to get matches like this, so when you did, it was special. There's a difference between doing 5 million finishers and kicking out of it just for the sake of doing it, which is honestly one of the main annoying things of NXT main events for me lately. This wasn't that though. This was a story. This was about 2 all-time greats, 2 who mastered the craft of wrestling in a dream match, just pushing each other to the limits, and they didn't even abuse the kickouts that much. Instead, they used the art of reversals. This was art. This was poetry in motion. This was storytelling. This was wrestling. You had Eddie Guerrero's last WrestleMania match, you had a dream match which was an all-time classic, the streak finally being brought into the light, and then you had Edge's moment and the resurrection of Randy Orton, the 2 biggest heels for the next generation. Now it was time for the crowning of the 2 biggest faces for the next generation. First up, you had John Cena. When John Cena walked onto SmackDown in 02, he looked like the most average, typical creator wrestler template you could think of. He had the personality of Patrick's house, wore an attire he got from Dick's Sporting Goods, and apparently all he knew to say was ruthless aggression. As Cena explained it, it just wasn't working, but they stuck with him. He then became his rapper gimmick, slowly but surely showcasing his promo skills, his charisma, his talent. He became the doctor of thugonomics. Magazine covers with Method Man, became a fan favorite, started getting the loudest pops of the night. He became one of the faces of SmackDown, went to WrestleMania 20 and walked out of MSG as United States Champion, finished number 2 in the Rumble in 05, and it was only right, after 3 years plus of grinding it out, becoming one of the most popular wrestlers in the company, and that too was all organically. The fans wanted to see him succeed. Here he was at WrestleMania about to fight for the WWE Championship. He was up against JBL, the longest reigning champion in SmackDown history at that point, the wrestling god, the heel that everyone hated, and John Cena was going to dethrone him. John Cena walked out on that night and got a huge reaction, had the fans going crazy. Cena's shirts and signs everywhere, the fans loved him, and this is what they wanted. Now, did him and JBL have the best match ever? Not even close. John Cena won in 10 minutes with the FU, but this wasn't about the match. This was about the result and the moment. John Cena was here. He had arrived and now was the WWE champion. Just look at how much the fans loved him, how happy he was. As a kid, Cena was my guy. He was our guy. This was one of the happiest moments for us, me and my friends as kids. Seeing my favorite win the big one, it was special to me because I saw the rise. I saw him become the US champion. I saw him fighting random people like Kenzo Suzuki, and now I saw him finally reach the top. John Cena would go on to become one of the biggest faces in pop culture. Whether you love him or you hate him, you have to respect him. His hustle, his impact, from rap albums to movies to award shows, and of course his amazing work with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. On this night, he officially became one of the faces of the WWE and eventually became the face of the company and would carry the company for 10 years. Most of the fans spent years hating Cena and wanting him to leave, but on this night, everyone was just happy he had arrived. On the other hand, you had Batista. Batista's story to the main event of WrestleMania was amazing, storyline wise, but also real life wise. Batista didn't get into wrestling until the age of 30, back in 1999. After growing up in poverty, getting into trouble with the law, trying to make money as a bouncer and lifeguards, after trying everything he could, he finally decided to try a career in professional wrestling. He made his main roster debut in 2002, and I'm sure most people never thought he was going to even get close to the main event of WrestleMania. He started off as the enforcer for Devon. It was okay, but that's not something that's main event material. After a few months, he found himself on Raw. Triple H and Flair created this group called Evolution, and Batista became a member. Triple H was the leader, the champion, Flair was the manager, the legend, and Orton was the future, and Batista was the enforcer. See, everybody knew that Orton was going to be a star, the future of the company, and Batista, well, nobody really knew because he got injured a few weeks after he joined Evolution. See, during that time, Batista was off TV, he was out of Evolution, barely mentioned, and Triple H remained champion. Orton got better and better, and they were going to replace Batista with Mark Jindrak. They even filmed the promos and everything, but it never happened. He was just too immature, and he wasn't what Triple H and Flair wanted in the group. So time went by, they stuck with the three, and they waited. And in October of 2003, Batista was back. He had one more shot to do something, to take advantage of this golden opportunity that he had, and he did. Him and Flair became tag team champions. He got better and better in the ring, and as time went by, he got more and more fans. Batista was making a name for himself, but it was still clear Orton was the guy. So Orton won the title, Evolution turned on him, he was going to set the world on fire, and it was eventually going to lead to WrestleMania 21 in the Staples Center at this very show with Randy versus Triple H, making Randy into the next big star of the WWE. But hey, as you know, Orton's title run didn't work out, and on this show he wrestled Taker, so that's where Batista came, and it was his time to shine. The torch was going to be passed to Batista, and it was going to be Batista versus Triple H in the main event of WrestleMania for the World Heavyweight Championship. What a crazy ride for a man who 6 years ago at the age of 30 just started wrestling. The storyline was perfect. It all started in November of 2004. Over time, you could see Batista was just getting tired of being Triple H's lackey, of him doing all the dirty work. He had aspirations of his own, but he kept silent. You had that segment where Batista and Triple H were talking. Triple H leaves and Batista just sitting there, grabs the title and just looks at it. Slowly and slowly, Batista started showcasing his desire to be champion, and the fans were with him because they wanted to see Triple H go down. It was a slow burn, but it was exactly what it needed to be. So then at New Year's Revolution, 2 months later in an Elimination Chamber match, it was Batista, Triple H, and Randy left. The last ones for the world title. Triple H could have saved Batista from being eliminated, but he didn't. Triple H wanted to hold back Batista. So Batista finds this out and he's angry, but then he keeps calm. He goes along with Evolution. He plays the game, so to say. Batista then goes on to win the Rumble. He was guaranteed a title shot at WrestleMania for either the Raw belt or the SmackDown belt. And for weeks, Triple H and Flair are grooming him to choose SmackDown. Hey, go fight JBL instead of your friend Triple H. You can run SmackDown, we will run Raw. Evolution lives on forever. So it was a contract signing. Was Batista going to stay on Raw, fight his friend and his leader, or go to SmackDown? He's holding both contracts. Flair and Triple H are cheering him on like proud dads. Batista drops the Raw contract and they're so happy and so excited. They have their thumbs up, so Batista also puts his thumb up. He's smiling and the smile slowly goes away and the thumb went down. A callback to when Triple H turns on Randy Orton by giving him the thumbs down. But now it was Batista's turn. It was game over. Batista attacked Triple H, Batista bombs him through the table, and just like that, Batista became one of the biggest stars in the company. Batista was going to end the reign of terror. Batista versus Triple H at WrestleMania. It was such a perfect build. They didn't overdo it like other years. It was what the fans wanted to see, and it was something we hadn't seen before, and it was just such an organic build up after years of being the henchman, and now it's time for him to shine. It was a solid match, but just like the Cena match, this wasn't about the match. It was more so about the results and the moment. It was about Batista ending the reign of terror. From September 2002 till April 2005, Triple H spent 65% of the time as the champion. He would always get the title back. He held the title for 616 days from September 02 to April 05, 616 out of 942, and it was just perfect. The man who was going to end his reign of terror was the man who 3 years ago nobody expected. When Triple H set up Evolution, he expected Randy Orton to be the one who's trying to overthrow him, so he got rid of Randy. He never expected it to be Batista. Batista just connected with the crowd. He was a strong and silent type, but he just had that championship material swagger. He walked like one, one, he talked like one, he had the presence of one. So Batista versus Triple H at WrestleMania, it made all the sense. The crowd was hot and they wanted to see Batista win just like they had seen Cena win earlier. Triple H did everything he could to make Batista look like a star. They made Batista look like a monster, an animal. Triple H barely got any offense in, and what he did, it was dirty, like cheap shots with the belt, and Triple H was left a bloody mess. And once Batista shook the ropes, turned around and had his thumbs up, and you saw all the fans do the exact same thing, that's when you knew, okay, Batista has arrived and the fans are with him, and this is going to be something. He puts his thumbs down and so did the fans, and they all erupted. He hit Triple H with the Batista bomb. 1, 2, 3. Batista won the World Heavyweight Championship. The reign of terror was over and the future was here. Weird to say because Batista was 36, but he held it down for the next 5 years. He held it down for the company. See, growing up, if you're my age and my age group, Cena and Batista were your guys, and Edge and Orton were the two who you loved to hate. These four men would go on to give us memories we will never forget. Cena and Edge with their legendary feud, Batista and Edge and Orton teaming up, and of course, Randy Orton and Cena fighting for 100 times. Batista versus Undertaker. Those feud and those matches were special to us, and obviously the moments like Cena and Orton teaming up against the Raw roster or Edge cashing in on Taker. Those moments were our childhoods, and this show set all of that up. This show made them into stars, brought them into the limelight, and even though Randy Orton was already champion, this helped him get back on track. With all of those stars being made, Money in the Bank being introduced, Eddie Guerrero's last match, the dream match, the streak becoming a part of WrestleMania as an actual focus, this was one of the most important WrestleManias ever, but especially to my generation.